Okay, hi, thank you so
Okay.
much. Oh my goodness. So the message I've been getting, John, is of
Where are you calling from? Where are you?
Northern California, from wine
Okay.
country, in a fire-affected area.
Right.
And
Yep.
I
Yep.
work with fire survivors. So the message I'm getting is for us to all be ourselves. The prescription is for us to be ourselves. And so I've been looking at that in myself, what I hold, what I repress, what I hold down, what I don't allow myself to have. And the Rilke you have quoted recently, it just blasted my heart open, because when I was 19 actually, I did a pilgrimage for Rilke. I went to all the places he wrote. I went to his grave. I sat by his grave.
Really?
Yeah. And when you were in that Rilke street, I was like, oh my God, I have to connect here, or want to connect. And this whole experience has enlivened me. I feel like I've been blasted alive through this pandemic and through particularly this gathering. When I wrote down my questions, because I've written a different question every single day.
It's nice you're answering your own questions, I guess.
I am.
Exactly
I'm
what it's all
finding the
about.
answers. But once I got to the Rilke, I was like, okay, what really feeds me in this? Because I give to trauma survivors through what I do, calls similar to this. And so I need to be fed. I need to make sure I'm
So
doing the
you're
best.
working in Paradise and all those fire areas and not
I'm in
Valley.
Sonoma County. I'm not in Paradise, but the Tubbs
Okay.
fire, which came through here.
Okay.
I've been working with fire survivors since 2017.
Wow.
And
Wow.
watching them go through what we felt was Armageddon. I mean, it felt
Yeah.
it was coming down on us.
Right.
To watch the resilience they've been able to cultivate through meditation, through mindfulness, through other practices, mind, body, medicine, essentially. And I've just watched miracles, right and left. And now I'm seeing these people become, their stability is helping the people around them. And that's what I feel this group is, or this gathering, that we're kind of the light. We can be the light in the world. And I said in my small group the other day, I feel like we're on a spaceship together. We're all, we don't necessarily even know where we're going. And you and
Spaceship
Soren,
Earth.
yeah, you and
And we're
Soren are
actually
kind of like,
we're going in circles around the sun.
exactly. We are. Yeah. And I just love when I can't get here, I'm upset. I'm just kind of like, okay, let it go, non-attachment. But I'm just thrilled that you called on me today, just because I wanted to connect and to just say, I don't know if you'd ever consider doing, or maybe you haven't, I don't know it, a book of poetry with your commentary, or a video or something like that. I'd love to just listen to you for hours about these poems. And Rilke saved my life when I was a young, I was 16. I started reading Letters to a Young Poet.
Yeah.
And that vision of the solitudes that border and protect and salute each other, such a distinction from the codependent enmeshment I was living in, the chaos. And I think that was behind that whole pilgrimage that I did.
Well, good for you. Deep bow to
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah. And poetry, like you were saying the other day about prose, it's not, that doesn't get it. It just, but anyway, yesterday you said something. I'm just going to read this because it was a poem and it just meant so much to me. It's, when you in some sense recognize and learn to inhabit your own wholeness and well-being and beauty, and are no longer in pursuit of some small-minded self-interest, then the world becomes a profoundly better place, and we can rejoice in the beauty reflected in every single face. It was something from the chat yesterday, and I'm like, that's what it is. Like, can I inhabit my wholeness in my beauty? And that's been something.
Yeah.
I was in an abusive relationship for a long time, and actually mindfulness got me out, because I started meditating. And one day in a conversation with this person, I turned to walk away, and I had a sense in my body that I was stealing something.
That you were stealing something, did you
Yeah.
say?
And so I registered that, and I went, that's very interesting that I would feel I'm stealing myself from someone. And so that's where the mindfulness led to realizing the kind of relationship I was in and starting to break it down essentially. I eventually had to run away to save my life and leave my daughter behind. I eventually had to come back and get her. So I survived that trauma. I had breast cancer 4 times in the last 16 years, and then the fire trauma, and now this. And I feel like, life is doing something with me around trauma and around healing. So.
Well, I mean, no poet could have said it better, and I really bow to you for devoting a good deal of your energies, as I understand it, to helping others in some profound way. That the trauma that we experience when it doesn't destroy us, and instead we use it to excuse me, get out there and stand shoulder to shoulder with other people who have experienced unthinkable loss and trauma and so forth. That there's something profoundly elevating about it that really can't be put into words. And what I love about the poetry, and why I have not written a book about poetry, and I'm not going to, but there's poetry spread throughout my books. And the reason for that is that the really great poets and really great poems take what's not possible to put into words and somehow find a way to put it into words. But the words deliver something that's way beyond the words. And that's why not all of us are great poets. I mean, it's a very, very, rare sensibility to be able to take experience and articulate it in that kind of way.
Actually, I also had this dream. This was not long after you were talking about Rilke, and I remembered being at his grave, and I had this dream that there was some kind of Buddhist, like a stone or something at his gravesite. I don't know. I guess that's, I just now remembered I had that dream shortly after you had that.
Well, as I remember it, he had some kind of, he wrote a poem about Buddha, and he had some kind of relationship to that. Maybe I'll leave you with a few lines of T.S. Eliot. I mean, everybody, a great poet can write great poetry and still not be the kind of human being you would want to be friends with. And T.S. Eliot was
absolutely.
But I think I may have offered this one before, but I'll just offer it. It's the last stanza of 4 quartets of Little Gidding. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring. And we're all exploring. We don't know what's going on nowadays. So we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Excuse me. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning, at the end of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between 2 waves of the sea. Quick, now, here, now, always. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. when I read that for the first time, I happen to have a friend who's a T.S. Eliot scholar. Excuse me. I said, like, hey, he couldn't have just made up this quick now, here, now, always. I mean, that's like pure mindfulness. And he said, well, he had a whole period of life where he was kind of infatuated with Buddhism. But who cares? I mean, the fact is that it's universal. There's no like Buddhist now and then everybody else is now. I mean, it's not about Buddhism, and even the word Buddha means awaken, the awakened one. So it's a kind of available universally. And Thupten Jinpa, who is the Dalai Lama's English translator, he has a phrase about poetry that I really love. And he says that poetry moistens the heart. Great poetry moistens the heart. And I tell you, we all need to have our hearts moistened a bit from time to time.
Yeah, the frozen lake you were talking about yesterday, that was struck me too. When is
Oh, yeah.
my heart is frozen, my mind is frozen. What am I hardening myself to? Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
because that's really important too. And, you know, the nature of frozen is also the nature of freedom, that it's just a temperature phenomenon. It's pressure and temperature in the physical world that decides whether something is ice or liquid water or steam. And those are called phase changes in chemistry and physics. And we go through phase changes psychologically all the time. Storms in the mind, we feel frozen in the body, we feel frozen in our emotions, incapable of action or even feeling, shut down. And yet our true nature is H2O, which means you don't need to be locked in a frozen state. Sometimes it's appropriate to be hard as ice, and sometimes it's appropriate to be able to flow like water. And that's what awareness will, if we cultivate intimacy with it, that's what it gives us, is degrees of freedom. And what this meditation practice is all about is freedom. It's liberation from all of the ways in which we create prisons for ourselves and then blame the whole rest of the world for why we're screwed up or a mess. So nice to have this conversation with you, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you. Thank you.
keep up the practice. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
wonderful. And I'm also tempted to say that I don't know if I've said this before, but because there are like several thousand people potentially right here, right now, and others that are going to see this later, there's no one right way to practice. It's really important to remember. It's not like, oh, let's get the method and then be true to the method, and then we'll just force the method to produce some result for us. No, it's more a listening to what is available in the present moment for us to attend to wholeheartedly and let it, in some sense, do us, open us up, reveal to us the hidden dimensions in which we are like prisoners of our own frozenness and then blaming other people for it or other circumstances or even past trauma, because that will not be liberating. What's liberating is recognizing the true nature is just water. It's not frozen.
Yes, the playfulness, that's the thing working with fire survivors. I just try anything. It's like it feels like a workshop. Everything is a workshop. It's a laboratory. It's an experiment.
Yeah.
And
Although I
just,
tell you, I mean, there's no one right way to practice mindfulness, but there are an infinite number of wrong ways to practice it. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, just go out there and whatever you do, call it mindfulness. No, it's an arduous discipline. And at the same time, it's a total love affair with the actuality of this fecund, pregnant, present moment, even as the proverbial stuff, as we're seeing globally, is hitting the proverbial fan. which is supplying a lot of horror and trauma and terror, and also enormous possibilities for opening right in this moment and right this year.
Thank you very much.
And just to say again, I mean, I should bore you to tears pretty soon. There'll be nobody on this, sort of in this gathering, but I just, maybe you've figured out by now, I only say one thing. I try to find a million different ways to say it, but I'm only saying one thing all the time. Okay, so if people want to criticize me, well, Jon Kabat-Zinn is always saying the same thing. I confess, I admit it, and it's on purpose. But the most important point, as Suzuki Roshi used to say, is to remember what's the most important point.
Thank you.